Hey everybody, welcome to Galactic Wisdom. Today we're going to talk about thinking. We're going to talk about thinking in the past, thinking in the present, and thinking in the future. We're talking about an evolution of thinking. And some of the questions that I'm going to look at today include, do you ever look at the things that other people believe and wonder how they can be so detached from reality? If we look at the world today and see how many things that people believe that clearly are not true, how is it people are so susceptible to believing in, to be blunt, sometimes nonsense? Have human beings always been this bad at working out what is true? Are we intelligent enough to identify and solve the problems that face us today on this planet? And this is an important question because some of the problems we're facing are pretty major. And I'm also going to talk about what does the future of thinking look like on this planet. And this pushes us into where we're evolving towards in terms of our intelligence, in terms of our thinking. And it also is directly related to our relationships with some non-human entities who are out there. Before I delve into this whole subject of thinking, though, I just want to let you know, those of you that don't follow me actively in other places, something quite interesting happened. A couple of weeks ago, I got invited to go to a location that's actually very close to an Air Force base, where a family has been haunted by something. They were experiencing paranormal activity. And specifically, they were experiencing the paranormal activity in the bedroom of a 3-year-old girl. So this is kind of poltergeist type stuff, as in the movie Poltergeist. And so I was contacted by a friend of a friend of a friend and asked, hey, Rupert, would you go to this home that is right on the edge of an Air Force base and investigate this paranormal activity? And I was intrigued because I didn't know if it was going to be just easily explainable away as some kind of scientific anomaly, or if it was going to be alien related, being close to a US Air Force base, or if it might be related. I'm just going to say hello to those people who are sending me comments. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Or maybe it was spiritual activity, ghost-like activity. Now, we have seen in a lot of places where there is alien activity, UFO phenomena, that often there is a spiritual enhancement or a ghost-like or a haunting enhancement of activity in that area also. If you look, for example, in places like Skinwalker Ranch, where you've clearly got alien stuff going on, and I've been there a couple of times and investigated that, you also have more ghost-like phenomena going on. You have some bizarre, full range of paranormal phenomena going on there. And indeed, often people who go to places like that where there are aliens, they will have what is known as a hitchhiker effect. When they go home, they seem to take home with them some kind of paranormal activity, which often is more ghost-like than alien-like. So I was intrigued that I was asked to go and see what was going on. Now, most people know me as a alien contact specialist, as a UFO researcher, but I've researched all aspects of reality over the course of my life. I started off by learning science. I'm a space scientist, space technologist, and throughout my life, I've been investigating ghosts, paranormal activity. I have led several paranormal investigations, although it's not something I'm well known for and it's not really my specialty. But I was confident that I could go into this place and do an investigation. So I invited a friend to meet me in the house a couple of weeks ago, and we went in. And we spent the night there. Upstairs, outside of the girl's bedroom, investigating to see if we could detect anything. And we had thermal imaging cameras and night vision cameras and electric field and magnetic field detectors, all recording to see if we could experience anything. Now, before it even got to the place, I had an idea that there might be something paranormal going on there, because after I'd called the family in the morning, in the afternoon, they received a call from my phone, which I didn't make. And they called me back, which is how I knew that they thought that I'd called them. And I said, no, I didn't call you. And when I looked at their phone logs in their phone records, it clearly has my phone calling them at 1:14 p.m. in the afternoon. And in my phone records, it is not there. So something odd straight away is going on. It wasn't an accidental dial. It wasn't a dial from my phone. So I knew something a little bit odd was going on. The activity that they'd been describing was that when the 3-year-old girl was asleep upstairs in her room, from downstairs, they could hear the movement of some of her toys on her bedroom floor, as though somebody was playing with the girl's toys at nighttime when she was asleep. They also heard footsteps on the floor upstairs, walking around in her room and along the corridor, the hallway up there. In England, we call it a landing. I don't know if it's what you call it here in the US. But yeah, on the landing and in her room, we were hearing footsteps. They were hearing footsteps. And one of the other children in the house, this teenage boy, he had seen a dark figure moving quickly along the landing upstairs and ducking into one of the rooms. And when he looked, there was nobody there. So we had good reason to believe something was going on. So I went in there, and the first thing I did is I took my tri-field meter, which is a fun little paranormal investigation tool and a science tool. It measures 3 fields, hence tri-field: electric field, magnetic field, and radio frequencies. And what I discovered is I didn't notice any paranormal activity in there, but her bed, and in particular where her head was, the levels of electric field shot up to about 10 times the value that is healthy for people. And in fact, this happens quite a lot, that people put their beds so their head is next to a wall, and in the wall there's electrical cables, and those electric cables or wires are generating an electric field, and that electric field is, your brain is in that electric field when you sleep. That's not healthy. And so there are 2 possibilities. Well, there are 3 important things to note about that. One is it's just not healthy. And I told the parents, this isn't healthy. Maybe you should think about moving the child's bed. And they did actually end up doing that. The second thing is high electric and magnetic fields, when they're incident upon a brain, can cause hallucinations. So it is possible that some of what at least she was experiencing, she was waking up in the night and feeling scared. Some of that might have been because of the electric fields or the magnetic fields around her head. The other point is that when you put electromagnetic fields around your head, it could be stimulating areas of your brain that enable you to connect with real ultra-dimensional beings, ghosts, aliens. It could be connecting you to paranormal realms unintentionally. So I didn't know which of those cases was true, but there was a strong electric field there, and they did end up moving the bed. Now, we spent the night there. We got a lot of video footage. We analyzed the video footage. I could not see anything at all in the video footage that was paranormal. But I still thought that something paranormal was going on there based on what I had heard. And they said that when I was there, me and my investigative visiting friend, when we were there that night, there was no activity. They couldn't hear anything. They have baby monitors out and video cameras and things themselves. They didn't pick up on any activity that night. So maybe if there was a spirit there, maybe they thought, okay, we don't know what's going on here. We're going to keep our distance from this. Anyway, I went home. I spent a week or two analyzing all of the footage. I convinced myself there was nothing there. And then in the footage, that is. And then I called them up and said, hey, listen, I think the next step would be for me to come over to your home and try and communicate with whoever is there. If there's a spirit there, if there's an alien there, we're going to try and communicate with them. So I went over there about 4 nights ago, and I went by myself, but I had with me, through my phone, I had a Zoom meeting going with my team of alien contactors, paranormal investigators. I had a team of people who I also meet with outside of this show. I'm meeting with them this evening to reach out to the Galactic Council of Alien Beings. We do that a lot. But they were in a Zoom call with me while I led this meditation in the home of this activity. And during the meditation, I started to feel the presence of something. And I couldn't tell what it was, but I could feel the electromagnetic presence in my forehead. It gets tingly and it starts to twitch. I could definitely feel a presence of something there. And I saw psychically a light move from left to right across my field of view towards their beautifully decorated Christmas tree. And so I was pretty certain something was there. And then I asked the mother of the 3-year-old child, she was meditating with us also, and I asked her if she picked up on anything during the meditation. Now, I didn't think she was going to say yes, because she had never meditated before in her life. This was just something she wasn't interested in, but she wanted to solve the problems in the house. She had a 3-year-old girl who was waking up every single night scared, and so she wanted to do whatever it took to cleanse the house or to get out this whatever it was from their home. But what she saw in her mind was very clearly her father, who has passed away, came up to her quite close. She saw the features of his face very clearly. She described a balding head, a goatee beard. And during the meditation, I invited whoever it was to hold hands with us. When I do any contact with any conscious being at all, whether it's a human being, a living human being, an animal, an alien, or a spirit or a ghost, I always fill my heart, my mind with love and friendship. And those people who are around me, I instill in them the same feeling of love and friendship. We're not going to go in here judgmentally. And so we just radiated love to whoever was there and talked to them in a reasonable way, saying, hey, please, can you show yourself to us? Can you tell us who you are? We asked questions. And then we said, you know what? Your presence is disturbing the little child at nighttime. Would you be okay backing away from that? So during that, I asked the beings if they wanted to connect with us by holding hands. And the mother of the child felt her hands being held very clearly by her deceased father. And she felt great love. It was a very touching, very emotional and loving moment for her. And when she was recounting this experience to us, she was in tears because it was so profound and emotional to her. It wasn't what she was expecting. The people in the Zoom meeting, they immediately sent me their feedback, and they too picked up on the presence of a male spirit who was related to somebody in the house. And they also detected what they described as a wall of electricity, which is interesting because that's one thing that I detected 2 weeks before, a wall with too strong electricity in it. And they also got the message that this person, this man, was guarding the child. So this child is the spirit's granddaughter, and he's there protecting her at night and maybe playing with her toys to try and interact with her a little bit. By the end of the evening, by the time I left, pretty much the whole family was in tears, in a good way, because they realized that what had happened was not that we had to confront and try and expel an evil spirit from their home. What we had found was a relative of theirs, a father, one of their fathers, the grandfather of the daughter, there in a good way to try and protect the granddaughter. And it turned into a beautiful family reunion. And they didn't want to expel the spirit. We talked to the spirit. We asked the spirit, hey, would you be okay just leaving the child alone at night to let her sleep? And we received a response back that, yes, I understand, I will do that. So that was just one experience that I had that I thought was pretty cool. Hello, Joe. Hello, Brendan. Thank you for being here. Now, it's interesting. I put on my social media page that I was going to do that. And I asked if there were any psychics, mediums that were out there, if they wanted to participate in helping me to understand the situation. And I got a lot of people sending me advice and a lot of people sending me support. And every single person who contacted me had really good intentions. They were trying to help. But what I found was that one or two of those people were sending me advice that was, had I gone in to that situation with that advice, it would have been very destructive to the situation. There were people telling me that there's an evil presence there and that it already knows I'm going and that I need to protect myself. And they were wrong. And I don't wish to criticize people for trying to help. But in terms of their perception of the truth, they were incorrect. And there were some people that were bringing their beliefs into the situation, telling me how I should go into that place and bring in religious stuff, belief stuff into the situation, unless I consecrate the ground with holy water and the name of Jesus Christ. And there was a lot of stuff like that people were saying to me, which I didn't do because I'm not religious. And it turned out to be unnecessary for that situation. People believe a lot of different things on this planet. And I don't mean to insult or criticize or be disrespectful to them, because we're all just human beings trying to understand reality, what's out there. But we should be able to, at this stage, at this point in our evolution, let go of accepting things as being true without proof, because when we do that, we don't just open ourselves up to making mistakes, and mistakes is often what we make. It is an intellectual mistake to accept something as being true without proof. That is an intellectual error. That's an invalidity. And this world has, throughout our entire 300,000 years of existence on this planet, been devastated, had horrific, terrible things that people have done in the name of their beliefs that have been incorrect. So I know this is a controversial subject, and I can see people dropping away from this show as I say these things, because people need their beliefs. We haven't evolved quite to the stage where we're ready just to accept what we know or what we don't know. That's what this show is about today. And in some respects, I'm going to be teaching to the choir, because people who really need to be listening to what I'm saying, they're going to drop away. And people who don't need to be listening to what I'm saying, they're probably going to be the ones that are going to stay here. But who knows? Maybe if I could appeal to some aspect of inner wisdom within people, that you stick around and listen a little bit to what I say. And I may be wrong. I may make mistakes. But if what I say makes people think at all, then I think that's valuable. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, when I'm talking about beliefs and what we accept as being true, this is determined by how we think. Thinking in a human brain is a bit like processing in a computer. In computers, processing happens in a chip called the Central Processing Unit, or CPU. Central processing units are able to process because they have a physical structure that's specifically designed for processing. Mugs can't process. If I tried to get my mug here to do a calculation, it wouldn't be able to do it. It doesn't have the right structure. It's not built for that. It's built for holding coffee. Excuse me while I take a sip of coffee. I have one coffee a week at the start of this show to keep me awake enough so that I can get through the show and hopefully still maintain my coherence. Paper can't process, can't think, because it doesn't have the right structure. It doesn't have the same or comparable structure as a CPU. In humans, processing happens inside our brains. We call that processing thinking. Brains are able to process or think because their structures are specifically suited for processing or thinking. We know that it's our brains that does the processing. We know it's our brains that does the thinking because, when people get injured, if you injure your hand or your arm or your leg or your foot, it might hurt, it might give you pain inside your mind, but it doesn't affect your processing skills. It doesn't affect how good at math you are, how good you are at determining truths. It doesn't affect your memories or things like that, your skills. It's only when you start messing with the central nervous system, with our neural network, with our brain, with our spinal cord, that you start getting impairment in our thinking, in our processing. So we know that it is that structure that houses our thinking, our processing, even our consciousness, for similar reasons. So, in a similar way, that the processing units of computers have improved over time to be able to process better, the brains of organisms on this planet have improved over time to be able to think better. And those trends are continuing. They haven't stopped. We haven't reached the end of the evolutionary process on this planet. And these will continue from the present day into the future. Our computer chips and our brains will continue to be able to process or think increasingly better. It's kind of an interesting question to ask which one is going to process and get better quicker. Because if computer chips get better and think better quicker than our brains, then we might have Terminator-style, Skynet-type situations happening in the future, in the near future, with artificial intelligence and so forth. Or maybe there will be an acceleration of thinking skills of beings on this planet. Maybe we're already seeing that in our alien friends. Maybe in the genetic engineering experiments that they're doing and the spiritual enhancements that they're doing on us. Maybe we're seeing that process, this technological, rapid technological evolution of our brains happening very quickly. Maybe that one will win out. Before We can start thinking effectively, though, about future thinking. It might be helpful for us to first think a little bit about past thinking. So I'm going to lead you through a little bit of history on this planet, bring us back up to the present day, and then we're going to take a big leap into the future of thinking. The history of thinking on this planet goes all of the way back to the first organisms on this planet to contain within them the right structures to be able to process or think. Terrestrial thinking goes all of the way back to the first organisms to develop simple neural networks about 600 million years ago. They were organisms like jellyfish and comb jellies. Now, those beings, and some of them have still survived through to the present day, they don't have a centralized processing system. They don't have a brain. They have a neural network that is spread over a large area of their bodies. The structure of neurons is capable of giving them basic low-level thinking, sensing, consciousness, but not, they wouldn't be any good at math probably. They're not that advanced, and they weren't that advanced hundreds of millions of years ago. The oldest fossils of organisms that had simple brains are about 521 million years old. Those organisms were primitive worms. I'm sure you know life started in the oceans because water is a very important part of life. That's why we are, as one Star Trek alien once described human beings, ugly bags of mostly water. We contain the water within us that we initially evolved in. And so we evolved in the water. And first of all, it was just single-celled organisms, then multicellular organisms. And then came a symmetry of body shape. That symmetry of body shape enabled things like worms to exist. And they had one hole at the front where they would take in anything they wanted to take into their bodies, and they'd have one hole at the back where they would expel stuff. And they started to develop, because of this front and rear, they started to develop at the front sensory organs like basic light detecting and vibration or pressure detecting organs or sensory devices, which helped them to detect food and the presence of predators and things like that. And because of these sensory organs being at the front end, it helped for neural networks to cluster close to those sensory input devices. It was more efficient for them to be there. Simple brains started to develop in the heads of worms, flatworms. But then, sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit. Ancient worms were conscious thinking beings. They had brains. They were thinkers. They were able to think. Nothing like how we can think today, but they were, at that time, the most intelligent and the most advanced terrestrial thinkers anywhere on the planet. I feel like I'm being touched from above. That's interesting. Since that time, over hundreds of millions of years, as the complexity of brains on this planet increased, the intelligence of animals increased. Intelligence is a product of the complexity of structure. You've got to have the right kind of structure for a brain or a computer chip, to be able to think and process. And we can improve the structure and the capabilities of computer chips, and they do keep increasing as we move forwards through time. They keep increasing because we're increasing the complexity and the sophistication of the structure. Human brains, and indeed all life on Earth, brains in general, when they evolve naturally, the same sort of process is happening. So there's an increasing ability of brains of animals on this planet to think or process. The first ancestors of humans that are known to have been intelligent enough to use stone tools lived in Kenya, in East Africa, about 3.3 million years ago. So I know I'm addressing some controversial things. Evolution is controversial. 400 years ago, it was controversial when Galileo said that the Earth is not at the center of the solar system. And it's taken hundreds of years for people to really accept the truth now that the Earth is orbiting the sun, and that the sun is at the center of the solar system. But at the time, 400 years ago, in something like 1633, Galileo was put under house arrest for saying things like that. He was told, he was ordered, you must not share your opinions with people. You must change your opinions on this subject. You are never allowed to publish anything ever again. And that was his life. He was not allowed to publish, and he was housebound under house arrest for the rest of his life. Why? Because people believed something that wasn't true. And a large proportion of people on the planet believed that thing. It was the Roman Inquisition that was being led by the Catholic Church at that time that had these, that was telling him, you must not say your beliefs to anybody. And today, even though things like the Big Bang and evolution have been absolutely 100% scientifically proved, we still are the same species as we were back then. And we still have a bunch of people around the world saying, well, we can't call those things proved. We have to still call them theories. They're not theories anymore. They're established, proved scientific facts that are taught in schools around the world as being factual. And if you learn enough science, then you can gain that knowledge. I congratulate the few people who are sticking it out listening to me, because I'm saying stuff that goes against our beliefs. Why does it go against many people's beliefs? Is because we've only just got to this stage in our evolution when we can glimpse this idea of giving up beliefs and proving things logically. It's hard for human beings. It really is. This is not who most people are, to consider these truths. But it is true that human beings did evolve on this planet, and we evolved from other human species. We call them archaic human species. I'm going back a little bit to before the human genus, taxonomic genus on this planet. And if we go back that far to 3.3 million years ago in Kenya, in East Africa, then we find that some people back then, some organisms, were using stone tools. Stone tools is, that tells us, if they're using stone tools, that their thinking skills are more advanced than a lot of the other organisms around them. About 2.8 million years ago, the hominin species Homo habilis evolved on the African savannas. Fossils of Homo habilis are similar enough to modern humans that scientists have placed this species in the taxonomic genus of Homo, which means human. Homo habilis is generally considered by most anthropologists to be the first human species. We are not the first human species. We have not been the only human species on this planet. There have been at least 13 that we have been able to prove existed, because we have the fossils of them. From the time of Homo habilis to the present day, the fossilized remains of at least 13 different archaic human species have been identified, including, but probably not limited to, Homo antecessor, Homo erectus, Homo ergaster, Homo floresiensis, Homo habilis, Homo heidelbergensis, Homo longi, Homo luzonensis, Homo naledi, Homo neanderthalensis, Homo rhodesiensis, Homo rudolfensis, and Homo capronensis. Wow, I got through that without stumbling up. They're not very easy to pronounce. You know, I like to listen to all different types of YouTube video that's out there. And there's this one lady out there who does a lot of videos about evolution, about these different species that I just mentioned. And her accent is different to mine. And when she pronounced Homo naledi, she pronounced it Homo naledi. And I don't know how to pronounce it properly. I'm not an anthropologist, but it was kind of funny when the captions were being generated automatically for her show. When she said Homo naledi, it translated, it interpreted her words as home owner lady. And now she's had t-shirts printed up with home owner lady on them. Homo naledi. Some of these archaic human species are known to have produced and used stone tools, as I've already said. Some, it has been proved, use fire to cook their food. Some wore clothing made out of animal hides that they stitched together with like bone needles and a yarn that they made. Some created works of art. This is all before Homo sapiens. There's a lot of human beings who think that there's this great separation between all of the other animals in the animal kingdom and human beings. Well, there didn't used to be this big separation. There were lots of different archaic human species, and they've become extinct for various different reasons. Some of them human beings probably killed off. Some of them we bred with into extinction. That might sound a little bit odd, but when different species are interbreeding, then their different genes merge together into one species over time. And that has happened to our species. You could get your DNA tested. There's lots of different companies out there that do it. And most people listening to this show, depending on where you're from in the world, if you have your DNA tested, they will tell you what percentage of some of these other species you have within you, because we interbred with them. I've been told that, or do I have the numbers here somewhere? Maybe a little later in my notes. It's something like 2.5% Neanderthal, 3.5% Denisovan, which is another human subspecies. But in any case, all of those different uses of tools that I described, those accomplishments, they're all indicators that those species had brains and thinking skills that were more advanced than all of the other terrestrial species on the planet at the time. Now, I'm not ruling out the possibility that aliens could and probably were, in fact, also on the planet at those times. They almost certainly had interactions with some of those beings. I don't know that to be 100% proved, but it's probably true based on what I've learned over the years. So when I'm talking about these ancestors of humans being the most intelligent terrestrial species on the planet, I'm not including the possibility of aliens in that sentence. It was approximately 300,000 years ago that modern humans, Homo sapiens, evolved. The brains of Homo sapiens had become a little larger than the brains of other Homo species around us. And at that time, there were several other Homo species around us. That caused the larger brains caused an extension of our brains and our cranial cavity, our head, an extension upwards, more directly upwards than sort of angled backwards, as had been the case in some of the in all of the previous Homo species. Supported by the already established practice among hominins of cutting and cooking food with stone tools and fire, if you're using fire, that means you're already starting the process of breaking down the molecules before you put them into your mouth. When we eat, from the mastication, from the biting, to the saliva, the enzymes in the saliva, to the digestive chemicals in our stomachs, we break down that food from larger molecules into smaller molecules. That process of breaking down from larger molecules to smaller molecules is called digestion. And in pre-cooking times, and still in organisms that don't cook their food around us now, all of that digestion has to happen within the organism. But we had started to cook food. And that cooking starts to break down the food into smaller bits. It starts the digestion before it enters our body. For example, if we're cooking potatoes or other starchy foods, the cooking breaks some of those starches down into the separate sugar molecules before you put them into your body. It breaks down hard, sinewy fibers into smaller molecules that are easier to eat. That is why our lower faces, by the time we had evolved into being Homo sapiens, our lower faces had become smaller, with smaller teeth, smaller jaws, and smaller jaw muscles. Our frames had become lighter, less robust, and more gracile, reflecting the survival and reproductive benefits of mental strength over physical strength. With the arrival of modern humans on the planet, the intelligence and the thinking capabilities of terrestrial organisms reached previously unequaled levels. However, since the time our species first walked on this planet 300,000 years ago, it still took us 300,000 years. That's a long time to work out, for example, how to make bronze tools. The Bronze Age started only 5,000 years ago, which is relatively recent in the history of our species. It took humans another 2,000 years before we figured out how to make steel. The Iron Age started about 3,200 years ago. It was only 2,500 years ago that humans worked out that the Earth isn't flat. Up until that time, it was believed that if you sailed too far across the ocean, you'd fall off the edge of the Earth. It was only about 400 years ago, as I've previously said, that humans finally worked out and proved that the Earth isn't at the center of the universe. And humans didn't do very good at it with accepting that piece of knowledge, that proved knowledge, very quickly. It was 165 years ago that humans finally worked out and proved that our species naturally evolved on this planet. It was proved 165 years ago. But largely because of religious beliefs, many people alive still don't accept that as being true. Even though humans discovered the reality of human-caused climate change 86 years ago, a lot of humans still don't believe that it's real. That's destroying us. Humans are easily manipulated by rich and powerful fossil fuel industry representatives and supporters and the politicians that they back, that they fund. It was 60 years ago that humans finally worked out and proved that the universe came into existence with a big bang. But because of largely because of religious beliefs, there's a lot of reasons why people don't accept things as being true. One of the important ones is it's hard to acquire some of this knowledge. Some of this knowledge is not easy to acquire. You have to put in effort. You have to learn lots of things. You have to experience stuff for yourself. And people like easy stuff. We've evolved to like easy stuff. And it's easier simply to believe something that is, I guess, more appealing or easier, something that fits in with what we prefer, something that fits in with how we were raised. So because of beliefs, a lot of people still don't accept that as being true after 60 years. Even though human beings are the most advanced thinkers that have ever evolved naturally on this planet, the history of human processing, of human thinking, my impression of it is it's really not all that impressive. I've just been joined by my alien friends. As a species, we simply don't. The evidence shows us that we don't discover new things very quickly. It takes us hundreds of thousands of years to discover new things. That is who our species is. And when new things are discovered, it takes hundreds of years for most people to accept those things as being true. And even after thousands of years of new knowledge being accepted as being true by a few smart, intelligent, wise humans, most people in the world still don't actually know those things, even if they accept those things as being true. For example, 5,000 years after the Bronze Age, do you know what bronze is made out of? Do you have that knowledge? 3,000 years after the Iron Age, do you know what steel is made out of? Do you know the difference between iron and steel? Would you know how to make some steel? We are standing on the shoulders of people in the past who have learned things, but we haven't learned them. Most humans on this planet don't know the knowledge that our societies are based on. Humans are incredibly easily manipulated by other people to believe things that aren't true. History has shown us that. We're blinded to reality by our beliefs. History has shown that to be true. We are the same species. We attack, torture. When I say we, I don't mean me, but as a species, we attack, torture, punish, and kill people whose knowledge contradicts our beliefs. Because I'm saying these things on this show, I guarantee I'm going to be attacked for it. And because I've said things like this in the past, I have been attacked. I've had my life threatened. I have had specific people contact me and say, hey, Rupert, why don't you believe in God? Why don't you teach God along with all of this alien stuff and paranormal stuff? And then when I explain my reasons, they go away and start attacking me. This is who humanity is. Throughout our entire 300,000 years of history, this is who our species still is today, I'm sad to say. Thankfully, though, there is hope for humanity. And because you're listening to me, there is either hope for you or you've already got to where I'm moving to. And I congratulate each and every person who's listening to the things that I am saying. Just checking my messages from Bill there. Our efforts and our drive and our persistence in trying to understand reality are starting to pay off. A few 100,000 years ago, enough humans became sufficiently proficient at thinking logically, that the chain reaction of knowledge acquisition was initiated and the modern era of science was born. After about 300,000 years of humans not having any real understanding of how to work out facts, truths, and knowledge, we're extraordinarily privileged right now to be living in a time today when we've just figured out how to do that. As a species, we have just discovered science. When I say just, I mean we've been moving towards it for maybe 1,000 or 2,000 years, but then 300 years ago, we started accelerating towards it. And now we really do accept, most people, a lot of people do accept the value of science. You're watching me now, listening to me now because of science. Science is the logical study of reality. Logic is the process of making deductions that have to be correct. The reason why a lot of branches of science end in ology is because of their use of logic. Logicology, biology, virology, geology, meteorology. Maybe not so much Scientology, maybe we have to completely we have to interpret from a paranormal perspective astrology. I wouldn't call it a science, but I would say that there's paranormal stuff going on with astrology when they're good astrologers, but they're not what I would consider to be true sciences. True science is a wonderful thing. It has worked out a lot of truths about reality, truths that we as a species didn't know until very recently. Science is a vast body of knowledge about reality. If anyone wants to understand reality, learning science is a good place to start. Now, it is, of course, true to say that science doesn't know everything. Reality contains many more truths than science has currently been able to work out. And we get glimpses of some of those truths when we explore phenomena like aliens and the paranormal. Good scientists understand that science has not yet worked out everything, and so good scientists remain open to considering the potential reality of the paranormal and alien phenomena. Science is not at all inconsistent with aliens, spirituality, or the paranormal. It just hasn't got that far yet. Now, we're approaching the end of this show, and I've got still a lot to talk about, thinking in the present day and where we're going with in the future with our thinking. I'm going to have to draw this show to an end soon, but I would like to encourage people, if you are interested in hearing more about what I have to say, I would like to encourage people to join my Galactic Wisdom Patreon group. That is a place where you can support me, support the work I'm doing, and attend some of my other online events, like the paranormal investigation that I did the other night, like my alien contact sessions. This evening, in 2 hours from now, I am going to be leading in this Galactic Wisdom Patreon group. I'm going to be leading a meditation, an astral projection, and a remote communication with the Galactic Council, whom we have a relationship with. We've been going to them for over a year now, I think, and we know them pretty well. You're invited to join us. And the Galactic Wisdom Patreon group is the place to be if you want to hear more and if you want to join us. I thank you all so much for listening to me. I hope you will join me at the same time next week, where I will continue to talk about this subject and expand it into the future. I wish you all peace and love and happiness. Take care and goodbye for now.